everyone. Today I'm going to be interviewing Matthew Macklin, who is a former middleweight champion of boxing, and now he works as a commentator on Sky Sports. Hi, Matthew. How are you?
I'm not bad at all. How are
Uh,
you?
Good. Anything else I've missed about your introduction, my dear?
No, former middleweight boxer, three times world title challenger, British, Irish, and European middleweight champion. As you said, currently now working for Sky Sports as the lead co-commentator.
Lovely. So it might be a familiar face to those of people who are interested in boxing. So what's interesting about Matthew and why I've asked him to come on is he's been following me on Instagram for a while, and I was like, oh, a boxer's into spirituality, which I thought was quite an interesting one. And we talk a little bit. But I just thought I would get him on because obviously he's a professional in the field of commentating, but also just to see what the role of spirituality has in his life and what's going on with that, and whether there's a crossover with the sports and spirituality intrinsically, and see what's going on. So where's the crossover? How does it all work? What's your belief in the universe? Start at the beginning.
Well, I mean, I've always believed that there is something else, something far bigger and greater than what we can see. You know, there's the seen and there's the unseen, isn't there? There's the physical and then there's the spiritual realms. And I've always believed in that. You know, but it's a funny term, isn't it? Spirituality. People will have certain connotations attached to it that might be very different to someone else's conception or picture of what they believe spirituality is. But you know, fate, destiny, you know, the law of attraction is a form of spirituality, isn't it? See it, believe it, achieve it. But you know, that's
belief, isn't it? And
yeah,
God is all about belief, and that
all about
manifesting
faith,
is the same.
all about faith, all about belief. And but we as humans, I think we find it very difficult to believe in something that we can't see, hear, feel, touch. You know what I mean? We only believe in what our eyes can see. We that's why I suppose in sport it's good to have role models, you know, people that you look up to and you want to emulate. And then there's, you know, there's the person, let's say if you're a school kid playing sport at school, it's like, yeah, it's great to watch the television and see your Ronaldos and your Messis and people, and you want to aspire and dream to be that good. But that's almost so far ahead, you can't see it. So how can I relate that and think that I can do it? But maybe a guy 2 years above you at school who got picked for England or whatever, you know, he comes from where I come from. He went to my school. He's had the same teachers as me, and my teachers say I'm as good as what he was at this age. Now all of a sudden I believe I can achieve that. You know, because the key ingredient in see it, believe it, achieve it is the belief part. We all men dream, all men fantasize about achieving and doing certain things, but the ones who go on to achieve it are the ones, it's the man that believes he can.
Right.
The belief is the belief is the part that summons it into manifestation. You know,
And I
that's
think
the
there's a
key.
Teddy Roosevelt quote which says, if you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
Yes. So, but it's not just as, you know, there's action involved as well. There's not, you know, the whole part about us believing is when it's like setting achievable goals. Yeah, there's the dream, but then you've got to work backwards. Now, okay, there's the dream. Now, what's my medium-term goal? What's my short-term goal? Now, how the short-term goal? Okay, I'm boxing in 10 weeks. Okay, now let's break that down into each week, and then break it down into the day, and then just conquer the day, because you know that's all we have for now. You know, and then setting those achievable goals gives you confidence. There's a famous little video clip on YouTube of some American general in the army talking about when you wake up in the morning, make your bed. It's your first job of the day. You know, make your bed and make it well. It'll give you confidence. and it helps you move on through the day. And it also making your bed tidy, and your room's clean. It's almost like decluttering how you live. But we could say the same about mentally and emotionally. If we're all cluttered, if our headspace is all frazzled with, fears and doubts and resentments and self-pity and all this sort of stuff, where's the room for faith to come in there? Working through all that stuff. People talk about healing, don't they? Spiritual healing, emotional healing. It's important to, for us to achieve our potential and live our best lives, that we haven't got stuff from the past dragging us down. We've got to get rid of that stuff that's weighing us down, and also fear of the future. But let's talk about, we can talk about the power of now and being present. Most people, I would say, a lot of the time, are living in the past or the future.
Mm-hmm.
They're regretting the past, which they can do nothing about because it's been and gone, or they're fearing the future, which hasn't even happened yet. And then they're not, so that it's impossible then to function, to be firing on all cylinders
mm-hmm.
in the present moment, which is all we have anyway. It's the only thing, it's such a simple thing to talk about, but to actually incorporate that into your way of life and how you live your life, that takes a lot of practice. Meditation is a big thing because it can, mindfulness, isn't it? It's quite, when you do it and you get good at it, you can actually see all these different thoughts, how many of them actually happen. These fears, things we worry about, like most of the stuff we worry about never even ever comes into existence.
I think one of the important things to realize is we all have faith. But the faith might be, or the belief might be, in something terrible happening. The faith might be that everything's going to be, the worst, the anxiety-based stuff, that the worst case scenario. Your faith is that something awful is going to be going to happen. The world's going to be destroyed in front of you, and that is faith, because anxiety is actually faith, but faith in the negative, faith in something really bad about to happen. It's still faith, and it's knowing that we are faith-based creatures and choosing what to have faith in. Is it a situation which is positive, or is it a situation that's negative? It takes the same effort, and you're manifesting whatever you're thinking. Anxiety is really pulling into creation and pulling into existence things that you don't want. So we're all using faith every single day, but actually knowing and planning and choosing what to have faith in will help manifest the sort of reality that you're looking for. But faith is so much a part of us, but we don't see it as faith. We see it as anxiety, unfortunately. Go on.
I think different words mean different things to different people. So I think, faith for me has a positive connotation of.
I know it's a negative connotation, but I'm just thinking it's what you're thinking, what you believe will happen, rather than faith is normally a positive word. I know I did use it in a different way, but it's your belief in what would happen, be it good or bad. That's, the faith would be the good side of it. But if you believe it, that something bad's going to be happening, you are almost, you're manifesting and bringing that reality in. But it takes the same effort to believe the good versus the bad, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, look, I think anything, whatever our constant thoughts, our consistent, constant thoughts, we're bringing it, we're attracting it into existence, aren't we? Whether that's why if you've got a positive mindset and a positive headspace, then you're going to attract positive things into your life. Where if you're constantly doom and gloom and pessimistic and fearful, then you're going to attract that into your life. And it's easy to talk, but it's again like the power of the mind and the power of attraction, all that. It is linked to action as well, like believing, like you say, if I set achievable goals, if I set little goals, short-term goals, and I achieve them, that gives me confidence. That helps me believe that I can achieve more. Where if I'm setting myself impossible goals, or I'm thinking too far into the future, that can summons a lot of fear, or a lot of lack of confidence, because I'm thinking, it's good to look ahead, but there's no point looking further than you can see, because then that, you know what if you're in the if you being scared of the dark, what you're scared of. If you turn the light on, you're not scared. You turn it off, you're scared because you can't see.
Yeah.
We're fearful of what we can't control. Is a massive thing, isn't it? We you know, we're all, people can be control freaks because they're scared that it's not going to go how they want, and they can, you know, trying to control life. It means you're going to end up living in a state of fear a lot of the time, because none of us can control life. There are forces and powers way beyond anyone's control, you know. So it's like, you know, you're going to be in a, you're going to create a lot of pain and resistance for yourself, where if you can just let go of the things that you can't control and just flow with life, life will be a lot easier, and you'll enjoy. You can then ground yourself in the present moment and be great in a form of gratitude for all the good that you have, and be a glass half full as opposed to a glass half empty. Then
I mean, there are ways to prepare for things, but there are ways to prepare for things. And then you get to a stage. I mean, I've had this with my healing. When I first started healing, I used to plan sessions. Like, I used to ask them what was going on and how everything was working, and I would plan sessions. And then I would get to the sessions, and then something else entirely would come up, and they'd want to be working on that. And then it became, you know, not that useful to plan sessions. But I think you can get to a level of ability and confidence that then you can sort of wing it, but you have to have done the groundwork to then be able to wing it, and then to be peaceful in whatever you're going to be doing, rather than it being nerve-wracking. But once you've got that sort of base level of ability, you should be able to wing a lot of things.
Yeah, I think what you have to do is you have to, you know, you can't use it as a cop out not to put the work in. You have to be prepared. Like, say if you're going into a meeting or a game or sport, let's say sport. So we put the training in.
Yes.
But we don't, the other team or the other person or on boxing or whatever the sport is, they're preparing too.
Yes.
And they've got their game plan. And I've got game plan A, and I've got B, C, D. If they do this, I could do, you know, we're ready to go. But ultimately, we don't know what's going to happen. So but if I know I'm as prepared as I can be for any eventuality, then I just have to be confident and have faith in my own abilities that I'll know what to do when it happens, and then, you know, switch off and don't burn up all that nervous energy, anxiety, of worry of how it's not going to go my way, and just know that I'm confident in my ability. I'm confident that I put the work in, and I'll be able to roll with whatever punches come.
Literally. So what's quite interesting as well, when you're in the ring, do you feel very present? I know that that's something that a lot of elite athletes have. They suddenly go into this really still state. Does that happen in boxing, or is that not really a thing?
It does, but just like in daily life, we have, I don't know, they reckon something like 70, 80,000 thoughts a day. So there's lots of different thoughts bouncing around. That can happen in a fight. I mean, you've got a guy standing a meter or two away from you who's trying to take the head off you. Yeah, you can be thinking some mad random thought.
Oh, really?
Which is so.
So what's for dinner? And then bush.
It's weird, but I mean, generally, the fact that when you're in a sort of, you know, a moment, like if you're in a fight in boxing and there's someone in front of you, you know, there is obviously adrenaline's pumping a million miles an hour. You're under threat in the sense that there's someone there trying to, you know, hurt you.
Fuck off. Yeah.
So you're you've trained and prepared, and you've programmed your body to react to certain, like you'll have analysed, studied an opponent, thought, right, well, he throws this punch, he likes to throw this, he makes mistakes here, he can get caught there. And then with your trainer, you'll do lots of drills. And what you're doing when you're drilling those repetitions, you're perfecting it, but you're programming your body. Because when the fight happens or the game happens, you're talking fractions of a second is the difference between moving out the way of a shot or getting hit with a shot. Fractions of a second, you know. So, you know, the body, it's almost like you say, oh, he's a good thinking fighter. He is, but he's thinking at light speed.
They're thinking before it. Actually, I read a study on this, and maybe this will make sense. Random things that pop into one's head. There was a study years ago about fighter pilots, and reaction in fighter pilots is very similar to boxing because it is split-second decisions which make the difference between, all sorts of things, right? They've actually worked out because they analyzed people on EEG machines as they were in cockpits, and they actually realized that they have made the decision before the things happened. Like, I mean, in boxing, it's like the sort of the punch is coming towards you, and you think that the decision to then, move out of the way or duck or whatever would be as soon as you see the punch. But from this analysis, it's before the target's actually got to you. It's
Yeah.
actually before, it's actually psychically knowing what's going to happen before the threat has actually manifested. It's almost like mind reading or something.
Well, you are right to some degree because your body's picking up on the tiniest of movements. It could be something that he does. He literally, or maybe he looks a certain way, and that's attached. And that's why when I'm a fight a while back, I was commentating on, and it was a guy called Luke Campbell, who's an Olympic gold medalist for Britain in the London Olympics, and he was boxing a guy called Vasily Lomachenko, one of the best boxers there's ever been, a Ukrainian guy. And there was a stage in the fight where they were kind of standing off each other, you could see they were trying to read each other. They were trying to set traps, look at his feet, maybe move his arm a little bit. And I remember one of the lines I used was, it might look like there's not a lot happening here, but trust me, there's loads happening here. And that's what we're talking about, that sort of trying to read the body language. And it's before the punches even came. They've already, they're already reacting
psychic.
to
It's
it.
actually it's precognitive. It's actually, and this is what happened with the pilots. It was before the bombs were set on them. They could just feel it before somebody pressed that button. They actually had an awareness of it in simulators and other things because you're just so attuned to it. So it's actually strangely a psychic ability when you're a sportsman or an athlete or a fighter pilot. It's actually a more attuned sense of you makes you a better athlete.
But everything is energy, isn't it? Everything's energy. So, like I said, I think we mentioned the World Cup, France and Argentina. I think it was Argentina. They were sailing away with it. And then all of a sudden, France come back and get 2 goals. And in a quick space, and all of a sudden the whole energy has shifted, the whole momentum has completely flipped on its head, and now from literally winning at a canter or looking like they were sailing into victory, then now the panic starts to set in, the doubts, the fear, and all of a sudden on the other side with the other team, then they're now completely in confidence, they're in the driver's seat, they believe. The energy has shifted, the momentum has shifted, the hope, the confidence, the belief, everything is completely turned on its head. And that's spirituality, that's energy, that's a force way beyond anything we can see or understand.
Yeah, definitely. So what about team spirit and psychology and energy and magic? Tell me all about that.
Well, so from boxing an individual sport, so the psychology there and the spirit, you want to, belief is key, isn't it? But certainly within a team group, then you've got the individual sort of self-belief, and then you've got the collective belief. So that's why man management is so important. It's the most important. A good manager, probably, we can use Alex Ferguson, for example, because in England, in the Premier League, he's probably the most successful manager there has ever been. Now, I don't think that Alex Ferguson knew a better style of playing football than any other manager knew, but I think he was an unbelievable man manager. I remember seeing a documentary. He said he'd be awake at night thinking of different ways he could motivate different players. Some individuals might need a kick up the backside. He might need a bollocking. He might need kind of bringing down off his high horse, and he might need challenging. Another guy who's maybe less confident might need, an arm around him, telling him, "I believe in you. You're going to go. You believe in you," because he needs in order for him to believe in himself, he might need someone else to believe in him, someone whose opinion he values and respects. All of a sudden now that guy believes in me. That's helped me believe in myself. And
he doesn't want to let him down as well.
Everything.
Yeah.
And you think, so that's a man manager who knows, okay, I'm managing the team, but I'm also managing each individual to get the most out of I need to get the most out of each individual. Then I've got to marry it all together. And I've got to recognize when two people don't vibe or don't work. And it might not necessarily be their footballing skills or ability or tactics. It might be they just don't get on, these two people at all, and they just can't play together. You know, and then you've got to accept that. If it's repairable, how do I repair it? If it's irreparable, well, then one of them's got to go. And also, as a team, you know, it's psychology and spirit. It's like, you know, if you throw a rotten apple into a bag of apples, over time, it will infect the lot.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, as a manager, you've got to really, in a team sport, you've got to, as much as you're motivating and making sure you're managing in the right way each individual, you've got to make sure that collectively the team is not being ego's thing, isn't it? You can't have someone who's a great player, but he's a disruptive, got a massive ego, a bit of a prima donna, and maybe he's just infecting the group. He's not worth having, no matter how good he is. You get rid of him.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? What about team spirit? Anything else on that?
Well, you see
it's funny that it's called spirit, though, isn't it? By the way, I just noticed it's called spirit.
No, exactly. It's the spirit within, isn't it? So you get, but so again, it's collective. Everyone's got their spirit, and you can raise the spirits of the team, their belief, and then you can do it individually, but collectively, team spirit, and then they all start believing in the manager, believing in the tactics, in the game plan. You know, hard to beat once you get that collective team spirit up. Hard to beat. You see teams that aren't as good as other teams, and they beat them, and that's because that's the team spirit. It's the belief.
Well, what's quite interesting about that actually is I remember looking years ago at the statistics about people playing at home of their whatever sport it is, and they're statistically more likely to win when you're playing on a home turf because you've got that support from the crowd and that team spirit, or those people physically there cheering you on, which is quite an interesting thing as well, because you wouldn't have thought it would really make a difference, but literally everybody's love and adoration and support of you makes a statistical difference to you winning.
But isn't it interesting how some teams or some individuals actually like going into the Lions' den because maybe they feel the pressure is off them, and actually they enjoy a siege mentality where it's, you know, there is power in, it's us against the rest of the world, you know, us against the world type thing. There's, you know, that unit, and like there's power in that siege mentality.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose it's different horses for courses, but it is interesting that it does affect you in different ways. But there is another thing to consider as the morphic field. There's Rupert Sheldrake's done books on morphic fields, and it's what happens is the energy which people coming together affect each other. Like, I'm sure everyone watching has either been to a match of some description or just gone and seen a football match at the pub. And you can go in there without any allegiance to a team, and you'll be in there for 5 minutes and suddenly you're jumping up and down and chanting. Like, everyone's energy is infectious who's into something. It really does. There is an energy in support of whatever team.
I went to an All-Ireland semi-final in hurling, a good, probably about 7 or 8 years ago now. It's a semi-final between Tipperary and Galway, and they'd met a few times in I think 2 or 3 years running in semi-finals, and there was never anything between them, like a point either way. And I remember in hurling and Gaelic football, you know, it's you play from where you're from, and the crowds, they sit together. You know, there will be they'll each have their end, but they'll sit together as well. There's no like crowd trouble or violence or anything like that. But this game was really fiercely competitive. There was some big hits going in, and it was tit for tat. And like coming into the sort of final 10 minutes, you could feel the energy and the atmosphere, like, and people that wouldn't normally, you could see these people, there were certain people, but family people wouldn't normally necessarily get that invested in a match, but they were like up on their feet because they were sucked in.
Yeah,
that is power. There was energy, like it was electric. There was a girl with me, an English girl. She'd never been to a match in Ireland or hurling or anything like that, so there would be no reason for her to be captivated. Well, she was completely locked in because it was impossible not to be with this energy that was around.
Yeah, Morphic fields. It's really interesting because information can be transported via morphic fields. So one of the interesting stories that they often use about morphic fields is something called a 100-monkey experiment. So basically, there was 100 monkeys around. Well, there was islands of Japan, and there were two islands which were not connected with one another, and they gave the monkeys, macaw monkeys, sweet potatoes, but they were buried in the sand. And so they kind of liked the sweet potatoes, but they were sandy and it was a bit annoying. So a clever little monkey decided to grab one of the potatoes, took it down to a stream, washed it, and then ate the potato. And it was clean, it was good, and didn't really catch on. And then there was some generations. So some of the younger monkeys started doing it. And then some of the younger monkeys were teaching the parent monkeys. But it went on for a number of years before anything really happened. And then when it got to a critical mass, somehow that information went to the other island out of nowhere. The other island, the monkeys started to wash their sweet potatoes too. And the more that did on the first island, the more that did on the second island. But it was like, by at least by 100 people or so, or 100 monkeys actually having some wisdom, then actually that information, that energy spreads and can teach people new skills, which is completely incredible.
Oh, for sure. No, it's fascinating, and I think it's an area, sports psychology, which it's linked, isn't it? To I think psychology, spirituality, they're linked anyway in sports, and confidence is another word. It's I think it's an area where people are more consciously tapping into it. I think it was always there, but I think that there's people that are actually singling it out and specifically, consciously tapping into it more and more.
Any more examples of how people are doing that in training?
I know people bring in sports psychologists to have like boards up with certain words that mean certain things to them. Music is powerful. I think if you you put like a playlist of motivational or and it could be songs that just mean something specifically to you, that maybe it was maybe you performed particularly well in the tournament, and maybe at that time on your playlist of where it was might have been a Walkman back in the day, but if there was a playlist of that you had on your your music at a time when you performed particularly well in a tournament, those same songs probably inspire positive thoughts or memories. Yes. So if you put those on a playlist and you kind of spend let's say it's an hour long, and you spend an hour each morning just literally visualizing, listening to the music, remembering where you were then, visualizing how you want this match to go, or and just being in that positive mindset, listening to the songs which again inspires and supports those positive thoughts. That's a pretty powerful thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And it gets you into a trance state. I mean, music has been always linked to trances, and spirituality. There have always been drums. There have always been certain sounds that elicit you to be in a particular state of mind.
Smells too, all
Yeah.
the senses. They bring back memories, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. Well, this has been interesting. Anything you would like to say, Matthew, to close on? Words of
Um,
wisdom.
no, like I say, it's I think the law of attraction over the last sort of, I don't know, 10, 15 years has become a bit of a fashionable thing almost. And people say, see it, achieve it, believe it, but the key part there, the key ingredient, is the believing it. And the belief, that the belief comes from, or gets stronger with, action. So it's not as simple as just sitting there dreaming on the settee. And we have got to put the work in. We have got to put the action in. We have got to, put the grind in. But then when we do that, and we know we couldn't have done any more, that's when we know. So Rocky 3, I love a Rocky quote, or I love a Rocky analogy, because the music is so powerful from all the Rocky films, but the moral of the story is powerful in them, And in Rocky 3, he got lackadaisical, he got complacent. That doesn't mean he was in the boozer getting pissed the night before the fight. It just meant that he'd lost his edge. He was going through the motions. He still sparred 15 rounds, and he ran in the morning. He was still physically in good shape, but he'd lost that edge. And then then he gets beaten up badly. He gets knocked out in a couple of rounds by the young, hungry, up and coming challenger. Yeah. And then he meets his old coach, and he says to him, you'd lost the eye of the tiger. He said, when I fought you and you beat me, you were young and you were hungry. You had a look in your eye. It was the eye of the tiger. You were ready to go through fire. But when I see you now, you've made loads of money, you've won titles, you've achieved, you've got civilized, you've lost that edge. And he takes him away into training camp, and he makes him do things he doesn't want to do. He pushes him to do things he doesn't want to do, that he doesn't believe he can do. He's scared that he can't do it anymore, but he has to face the fears, and then works on it, gets a little bit better, then he starts believing. And you can see, as he starts doing things which he didn't think he could do, his belief starts to change. Now he thinks, no, I can do it. And the belief grows, and it grows. And by the time he gets to the fight, he's a different man. He's the same person physically, but internally, spiritually, a completely different person. This man has the eye of the tiger. He believes that he's going to win. And because he believes that he's going to win, he does win.
So what's interesting about this, I remember going to an MMA, mixed martial arts, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, fight a while ago. And I went with my friends, and we were betting, and we were like, right, who's going to win this fight? And we didn't know any of them. And so we were like trying to work out, and I was picking the wrong people, and he was like, you're missing it. And I said, what am I missing? And he was like, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. It's like, it's the hunger, the eye of the tiger that you mentioned, that means whether someone's going to win or not, whether they really need to prove themselves.
That's my favorite ever quote. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. But we, working for Sky, we normally have, on the bigger shows, a pay-per-view event, they'll what they used to recently, well, not recently, but a couple of years ago, we used to have these fighter meetings. So the fighters, all the fighters that were fighting on the card on the night, would have the press conference, usually the day before the weigh-in or the day before that, and then would do these fighter meetings where they'd spend like maybe 15, 20 minutes on one-on-one, and they'd come in, and there'd be the team of the television team, and we'd maybe fire a few questions at them that we wanted to ask individually. And there was a fight a while back. Well, there was two fights that jump out at me. I think it was Michael Hunter against Alexander Povetkin when he fought on the undercard of Anthony Joshua and Ruiz in Saudi. But in the fighter meetings, I remember turning with Michael Hunter when he left the room. I remember turning to one of the colleagues saying, I think he's going to win tomorrow night. He just had that.
Fire.
He just had that self-belief. I just thought I just felt it. I felt the energy. And there was another one, Charlie Edwards, when he won the world title. He came in and he was the underdog for this fight, and he hadn't boxed particularly great, I think, coming into it, or his form hadn't been amazing. But the way he spoke in the fighter meeting, and I'm not talking about tactics or technique or anything like that. I'm talking about his spirituality. I'm talking about his mindset, his absolute self-belief, and what he talked about, his journey, where he'd been down, how he'd changed trainers, and he'd put I could see, now this is a man on a mission. Yeah. I remember thinking, win, lose, or draw tomorrow night, he is going to perform. And he did, and he won, and it didn't. And I remember thinking, like, sometimes you have to look past the surface. You know, we've all got this exterior, but internally, Andre Ward, a great fighter from recent times, retired a few years back. His greatest asset, I believe, as a boxer, was his internal fortitude, his self-belief. You know, that was his greatest asset, I thought.
Amazing. Wow. Well, thank you very much, Matthew. So how will everyone find you? You've got your Instagram. Do you want to say what your Instagram, in case anyone wants to follow?
Yeah, I'm on at Matt Macklin 82.
And
the Twitter's just Matt Macklin.
And that's everywhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Lovely. Cool. Well, I'm going to put all that. So if you send me that, Matt, I will put it below for anyone who wants to follow you. And thank you very much for joining me today. It's been really interesting. And please, everyone, like and subscribe to my YouTube. And I've got a new Spotify and all of my socials as well, my Instagram. I don't really use Twitter, but yeah, there we go. Thanks very much, and see you later, everybody. Thank you.